Hello, golf fans, and welcome to a special Masters theme edition of the Big D podcast. Before I announce today's special guest from Boston, please subscribe, like, share, comment, or maybe hit a driver off the Spunky Spectrum Sports YouTube page where you can see not just this interview, but you never know what to expect. Might be swimmers, might be golfers, it might be, betting experts. You never know what to expect. Speaking of betting experts, live from Boston this afternoon is a Draftkings betting and DFS expert, Reid Fowler. Reid, did you bring your driver, three-wood, or a putter?
All three, Dylan, are with. Hey, thanks for having me on the Big T podcast or Big D podcast. Excuse me. I'm very excited to be here. All of my clubs right now are in storage. Well, I took them out of storage. I had to use them for a commercial shoot that I was doing, and then I put them back in storage. It's getting a little bit warmer here. We're close. We're close. I know where you are. It's summer year round, but up here in New England, we're getting close. So I have to dust off the clubs, and I'll probably, if I had to bring one club, it'd probably be the putter, right? Drive for show, putt for dough, bud.
Oh yeah, especially this week, because you know what this week is.
Oh
It's
yeah, it's
Masters.
the Masters, man.
It's Masters week. And thankfully, the Masters is happening. It is at its usual time and place on the calendar, because this time last year it didn't seem right not having the Masters in April.
Yeah. Yeah, it was weird, right? It was weird because the entire last year was weird. And, I think all of us, all golf fans, you and I included, we wanted something. We were getting golf, but, we're creatures of habit, especially in the industry, right? Where courses are played at the same place, usually the same course. Maybe you get some tournaments that go to different places, but especially for Augusta National, we know it's April. Again, for us, where we check the weather in the morning as part of our morning routine, it's the sign of spring is coming. Like we're getting out of winter, we're thawing from the ice and the snow, and so all of that is synonymous with golf and with the Masters. So when you take that away and you move it to November, then we're all like, well, what's going on? Is this the signal of winter coming? Right? Is winter finally coming? And I get Jon Snow on the line and ask him if Masters in November means winter is here. But, Dustin Johnson winning in November, Dylan, you can probably attest to this. And he played lights out. Is it going to be the same this year? Probably not, right? It's probably not going to be the same. So it's interesting to see what happened last year in November, how many people either fade that or how many people chase that. I'm in the camp of potentially chasing, especially for GPP tournaments, chasing the guys that did well in November, because so much of the narrative is going to be, well, it's not the same, right? It's not the same course. It's not the same conditions. But if you play well at Augusta, no matter what time of the year, you're going to get a mark. You're going to get a little star on Fantasy National on my list for this year.
Yeah, speaking of last year's Masters, I have never seen a golfer tear apart Augusta like DJ
Oh,
did. Yeah, it was soft. Yeah, it was probably the easiest Masters course we've ever seen, but DJ ate Augusta for lunch, dinner, and maybe it'll say dessert for the champions dinner.
yeah, exactly. Right. His champions dinner is probably going to be what? Just a sandwich, maybe some chips. Like, he doesn't care. He's not going to waste his time. Or maybe he does. Who knows, right? But you're right. I mean, Dustin Johnson last year, what did he gain? Just over 19 strokes total at Augusta. It was a masterclass in how to tear apart Augusta National. And then now, how do we get other Dustin Johnsons this week, maybe at lower ownership, maybe at higher odds? We mentioned it earlier in terms of the betting odds. Where is the best value? And I think there are a couple of guys that I hope we get into in a little bit that we can talk about. But yeah, DJ, a guy who's not playing extremely well leading into this tournament, but I mean, he's the best in the world for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, DJ didn't look great at the Players. I'm not sure we can take much into the match play event because it is match play. And other than maybe the Ryder Cup, do you think DJ cares about match play?
Especially when Kevin Na starts chirping at him, right? Especially when Kevin Na is starting to teach DJ about the rules, which Kevin Na was in, complete within his rights to say, hey, you got to wait until I give you the putt. But that's not going to matter. Like, DJ's not going to care. At that point, I think it was, Dylan, where you saw DJ be like, you know what? It is what it is. If I don't win this pod, if I don't win this tournament, okay, I'm going to defend my Masters tournament next week.
And then he sort of entered Vallejo, and then he's like, I'm going to Augusta.
Right. He kind of like haphazardly did, and he's like, what was I thinking, right? Like, he sent like the text message, or he sent the email, and then 3 seconds later, he tried to press undo, but he didn't do it in time, and so he had to tweet it out. No.
So now we get to this year's Masters, and before we talk about some DFS options, we've got to talk about betting. And I think DJ's odds are 9-1 or like plus 950. If you look on, I've got the odds up on the DK Sportsbook. DJ plus 950. Bryson DeChambeau at plus 1150, and then the maybe the most interesting name in the field this week. Jordan Spieth finally got that monkey off his back.
Yeah. 83 tournaments or whatever it was, or 82 tournaments where he didn't win. Yeah. I mean, he's right up there, right? I'd love to hear your thoughts on these top guys. I think my favorite, of the top tier, right? I would say the tier starts at DJ, obviously, and then it stops at Justin Thomas, those 5 guys. My favorite of that group is Bryson DeChambeau, right? At plus 1150, like, you could argue that him, like Dustin Johnson, Bryson, and probably Jon Rahm, all 3 of those guys could be the same odds, right? All 3 of those guys could be the same odds, and we wouldn't be like, this is weird or this shouldn't be the case. Bryson has been one of the best players. I think he has been the best player over the last 24 rounds, tee to green. In this entire field. Jon Rahm is a top 5, top 10 machine, and Dustin Johnson is Dustin Johnson. So if I'm looking at those 3, right, Jon Rahm plus 1250 coming off of the birth of his son. And so he's coming off of that. So he might be a little tired, he might get a little baby bump. I don't know the case with what he's dealing with. But Bryson's right there at plus 1150. We know how great he is with the driver. But Dylan, he's amazing with his irons. If you look at what he's done over the past 24 rounds with his irons, he's top 12. He's a great bent grass green putter. We don't need to talk about how well he's going to do on these par 5s. The assumption is he's going to score on these par 5s, which is what you need to do. I'm thinking that minus 13 to minus 15 win this golf tournament. And if he's birding, 75% of the par 5s for the entire tournament, he's going to have a good shot, and that's what the driver does for him. That's what he's been able to do. Now, his experience at Augusta hasn't been a lack of experience, right? Or his success, better yet, hasn't been of the ilk of the other guys up there. And so maybe we're getting a discount, right? 1150 is not really a discount. 11-1 is not a discount in golf, but I think Bryson's my favorite. Who's your favorite up here?
Bryson's interesting because if you look at what he's done, particularly in the Florida swing, he won API and contended at the Players, and I would probably look at and even though the API is not a necessarily a great track, it is a good field. It's certainly better than some of these other fields like Spieth won yesterday. But one problem that I see with Bryson. Look at what Bryson did last year at the U.S. Open. What did Wingfoot have? Long, thick rough.
Yeah.
What does Augusta not have? Long, thick rough.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not hacking out the fescue at Augusta.
Yeah, it's a pine straw, right? It's the pine straw that it's not going to be as penal. And we've seen guys, look, like Phil Mickelson is probably the best at this, or who has the most knowledge from the pine straw at Augusta National, is saying, like, if you don't get it behind a tree, like it's pretty easy. And I use the term easy, really, like, with relativity here, like easy is, there's nothing easy about Augusta National, but this is a course where, if you're not in the fairway, it's going to hurt, but it's not going to destroy you. If you're not Bryson and you're not 370 down the fairway in thick rough where you can use a 9-iron or use a wedge to hack it out there, get on the ball a little bit, these guys in the U.S. Open are hitting 5, 6, maybe even 7-irons out of the thick fescue into small, very fast greens at the U.S. Open. Like Bryson just had a clear advantage just hitting it down there and getting it. Matt Wolff did the same thing, right? They were both 1 and 2 there. So I hear what you're saying. And if that's the case, then probably JT, right? JT probably presents a lot of upside here. He was 4th in November's contest. He was 4th, Dylan, in November, and he didn't play great at all.
No.
Not at all. So he's someone to take a look at. Maybe more DraftKings, though, right?
Yeah, but one problem with Justin Thomas we've seen, he can be a little hot and cold with the putt. I mean, he won the Players, but he hasn't necessarily putted well at Augusta. I mean, top 4, but I mean, think of 2019 when JT really wasn't in contention dealing with that bum wrist. And then I think Thomas, and speaking of Justin Thomas, we'll talk about DFS plays. I think everybody will be on him this weekend. A guy I'm really interested in betting-wise this weekend, the biggest question maybe whether this guy plays is Brooks Kopeka.
Yeah, he's Brooks Kopeka at 2,800 right now in the DK Sportsbook. Man, like you probably, and this is probably something you can present to your listeners as well. At what number is Brooks? And I think Pat Mayo, he tweeted this out as well, and he's exactly right. Like, what number is Brooks just a auto bet, right? I mean, plus 2,800 for Brooks. He finished 2nd here a couple of years ago, in 2019. Like he's just one of the best. And now he's coming in with some extra motivation, which he doesn't need, of guys like Brad Faxon saying his recovery, we're not going to see him for another 6 to 8 months. And what does he do? He enters in the tournament, the Masters, right after that comment comes out. Like, we know Brooks, like he needs that extra little push, even if it's at a major, to get there. Would any of us be surprised if he's up there competing with these guys? Absolutely not. At $2,800, I don't think Xander Schauffele should be, above Brooks. I get why he is, but, that's sort of always the thing with Xander. But yeah, Brooks is very interesting.
And if you look at Brooks, when he's played, not if he's played, but when he's played, he's been great. I mean, he won the tournament in Phoenix, did well the tournament just at the World Golf Championships just up the road from me in Sarasota. So it's the question if Brooks's knee can hold up the full rounds at Augusta, where you've got undulations all around the place. I mean, thankfully the rough won't be bad, so hopefully he'll avoid a scenario. But when Tiger came back from his knee injury at the 08 U.S. Open, he won. So could it be an omen for Brooks come back from the knee injury?
Yeah,
the Masters, right?
Oh, I love that. And look, again, none of us would be surprised. This guy is a big game hunter. Like Brooks looks at these major tournaments, and his motivation to win is I wouldn't say it's second to none, but he definitely gears up when it's major season, and this is the start of it.
Yeah, and so now we switch from the betting side to the DFS side, and could you explain the difference between a GPP tournament like the Millionaire and a single entry or a cash game?
Yeah, so cash game, right? Like the top 50, in the contest get paid. So it's not like in GPPs where it's the price differential of where you win. It can change drastically. In cash, you just need to be in that top half, right, of competitors, and you win the same amount. You win the same amount that first place does, that the last person in that range can win. So when you're playing cash, it's less about roster percentage, it's less about ownership and sentiment. It's more about the consistency, right? Can I get these guys in the lineup that are going to get me to that ownership, or excuse me, get me to that placing to where I'm going to cash and make my money back. It might be a double up, right? So if you put in $10, that's what you get back. And so you're doubling up your investment. So it's less about roster percentage, less about strategy in terms of golfer sentiment. Single entry is exactly what it sounds like, Dylan. It's single entry is you got one lineup maximum in that contest. What I always attribute it to is when you're playing like Call of Duty and stuff like Halo, and you're playing on like the highest level where like just a single Nick is, it takes you out. That's what single entry is. Like you have one entry, you can't be playing, it's not a multi-mass entry. It's not an MME where you got 150 lineups in there from the same person, or it's a little bit more of a, you can diversify a lot of your lineups. Single entry that's it. Roster percentage doesn't necessarily matter as much. It still can matter in terms of what players you want to target, but single entry is just that. In GPPs, it's a guaranteed price pool. And then by tier, right? Number one, your payouts, depending on what contest you're entering in DraftKings, your payouts can be extremely high. But only a certain amount of people win, right? If it's, let's just say, for example, it's 1,000 people can enter in this tournament. In a GPP, usually only a certain select number of people win. Let's just say, for example, that's the 300, the top 300 players. The 300th person will get a substantially less amount than number one. The allure of that is if you win a GPP, you're winning a lot of money. The downside to that is you're going to have to play, a little bit more strategy where roster percentage comes into play, or you're going to have to play a little bit more chess than checkers. You're going to have to play a little bit more against your competitors in that contest to see, okay, well, if John Rahm is going to be heavily rostered, do I fade him for Rory, who's not? If Rory hits, your lineups are going to do better. And so GPPs, a little bit more risk involved, higher payout, higher reward. Cash games, less risk. You're making the same amount of money as first place. Like, if you're the last person to place in that tier. And then single entry, that's just it. You got a single entry and you got to hope and pray and cross your fingers and cross your toes to make sure that hits.
Yeah. For the Masters, it seems it's so unique building lines because usually in a non-Masters major, if you get 6 to 6, you're catching 99% of the time. But at Augusta, 6 to 6 won't be enough.
Exactly, and you're exactly right, because top 50 and ties make it right within 10 strokes of the lead. Also, there's 88 players. And so this is by percentage wise, it's the highest amount of players make the cut by percentage, not by number potentially, right? Because other fields have twice as much, but by percentage, this is a field that you see a lot of the players. So it's a prerequisite that if you want to cash in GPPs, you're going to need 6 to 6 year lineup. And if you want to win the Millie Maker, you want to be number one, you're going to have the winner in your lineup.
And then probably a couple in the top 5, and then all your golf was probably in the top 15 or 20 at Wolves.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can if you want to win, right, the big money. If you look at last year's winner, and even if you take a look at tournaments on DraftKings, right, when people who win, they usually have a considerable amount of people that are in the top 10. You can potentially get the players. You saw some guys maybe in the top 15, top 20. Depending on if they were guys who are making a ton of birdies, right? Finishing place doesn't necessarily matter as much as DraftKings scoring, because those necessarily don't correlate always one-to-one. Like first place in the tournament is usually first place in DraftKings scoring, but you might see some differentiation between fifth place in the tournament and who was fifth place in DraftKings scoring, because maybe they made a ton of birdies, but they just made more bogeys than the other guys. So that's also something to note, like what you were mentioning, that you have to get your guys, especially here, inside the top 10, pretty much.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to not last year, but the 2019 Masters. I don't think the millionaire won. I don't think Tiger was in the winning millionaire line. I'm not 100%, but I don't think Tiger was in the winning millionaire line.
Yeah, I can't remember. I want to say he was, but yeah, I can't remember at all.
I don't think he was, but now we look at this year's Masters, and one tool I've been using the last few days making lineups is a fantasy national where you can make all the lineups, and by golly, right now. Can you take a wild guess? I know you're cheating right now. Can you take a wild guess who the number one guy is?
The number one guy in roster in ownership?
In ownership projections right now.
Shoot. Jordan Spieth?
Number 3.
Oh, okay. Wait, hold on. I like this game. Okay. Ooh, whenever Mayo's article comes out, everyone usually gets a bump on Fantasy National. So I'm trying to read. It's not. It can't be Webb.
No,
Um,
no,
oh, that's a good question. Maybe Bryson.
no. It's like Bryson's only at
Top 10.
15,
Yeah.
16%.
Huh. Then yeah, I have no idea.
Uh,
I would have guessed it was Jordan, but
I
who you
would have
got? Who is
guessed.
it?
I would have guessed it would have been Jordan, especially after yesterday. But
Yeah.
Justin Thomas.
Yeah. People are relying on the Players Championship win. His price tag 10-6, right? He's not as expensive as the other guys. Yeah, he was fourth place last year. I get it. I get why he's there. But maybe then that's just it, right? Going off your last question, is there a viable option to fade JT, pay up for Bryson, or pay down for Rory or Xander, and completely fade someone like JT, who like you just mentioned at the beginning of our show, that his putter can go cold. What if he gets a cold putter here and he misses a cut? Like, that's probably not going to happen because he's in great form. But man, what if that happens and Rory did what he did last year, where he goes top 5? So that's something that you have to consider.
What if instead of missing the cut, Justin Thomas finished T18 and Roy finally wins the Grand Slam this week?
Yeah. Oh, I think you're going to see a lot of happy people because what is Rory coming in at on Fantasy National? It's probably around 10, 11%, if not less.
Roy is at 11.1%.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think more and more people are going to talk about how Rory is a fade this week. And I would argue, and his odds on DK Sportsbook plus 1900, buying the dip, right, Dylan? We got to buy the dip, sell the top. And if Rory's at plus 1900, I'm pretty sure this is close to the bottom. I mean, maybe we see him if he completely falls off the face of the earth, which I don't think is going to happen. He's just too good of a player that we might see him start to get into the plus 2000, the 20-1 range. But boy, like Rory at plus $1,900 at Augusta after a top 5. If I told you and you didn't know anything about what Rory has done since then, I said Rory got a top 5 in his last Masters. He's at plus 1900, and he's one of the low, and he's just above $10,000 in DraftKings. You'd be like, oh yeah, yeah. And we can't take it into a vacuum and say, oh, none of the other stuff matters, because it definitely does. But guys, Jordan has said it a million times. You just feel a certain way here at Augusta National that just gets you back into form. And Rory, if he doesn't win, we're not going to be surprised. If he does win, we're not going to be surprised. But top 5, top 10 at 11%, maybe closer to 10%. Yeah, I mean, that deserves one lineup if you're making multiple lineups.
Yeah, so who are your favorite DFS options this week?
Yeah, good question, because it's gonna dictate a lot. So I got Bryson and Rahm at the top. I think building 2 guys up above 10,000 is the way to go. Last year's winner, I believe 2 guys were above 10,000, and then the other 4 were in the bottom $7,000 range. So I'm going to give you guys a couple as well down there. But I like Rahm and DeChambeau. If I had to rank those 2, it'd be DeChambeau first, then Jon Rahm. I think a lot of people are going to fade Rahm off of the baby news, like, oh, he's tired, a new dad. I think that's baloney, because I think Rahm's just an amazing player. If we go down another range, I really like Patrick Reed at $9,300. I think with Jordan Spieth winning, Dylan, with him winning, I think a lot of that, a lot of people are going to take off of Patrick Reed, go $100 more to Jordan Spieth, and then try and stay somewhere else, right? Maybe they go to a little bit lower, the 7K range. So I like Patrick Reed. We know what he does here. He's played well here, obviously, as a past winner, and just has one of the best short games in the entire PGA Tour. Going down all the way, there's some guys in the 8K range that I like. I think Sanjay, Daniel Berger are guys you can consider. I'm trying to stay away from the 8K range because right now I feel like that's a tricky one that you could see some guys, right? They're kind of in form. Maybe they don't have the greatest course experience, but they're right there. I think that's sort of a dead zone for me personally. A lot of great players there. But here are 2 guys in the 7K range that I really like. I like Justin. I like Justin Rose. Give me Justin Rose, Dylan, at $7,200. He's been playing like, you know what, for the last handful of months, or excuse me, weeks. So this is not a current form play at all, but this is course history. Since 2016, the last, what is it? Or even probably even dating further back than that. There's only been a handful of guys that have gained more strokes than him since that, over that time frame. And 3 of those guys are above $10,000. So getting getting Rosie at $7,200, it's more of a current form play. Would we be surprised if he misses the cut? No, because he's been playing bad, and he withdrew with back injuries over the last 2 tournaments. One, I believe, at API, and then he didn't play the Players to get geared up for the Masters. We know that he schedules his gear around these majors. So I really like Justin Rose. And what about Joaquin Niemann? $7,400, Dylan. He's one of the best players off the tee on tour. We know that. He's also really good at bent grass green putting. We know that. He's only got 1 start here, and it was a cut back in 2018. So he has 2 rounds. He qualified for 2020, 2020's November edition, but he got COVID and he had to withdraw from Augusta. I think that when you look at everybody else in the 7K range, you're going to see some names like Paul Casey, Jason Day, Louis Oosthuizen, a lot of players who have great course history here. And Joaquin Niemann, I don't think he goes unnoticed, but I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes in the top 15, top 20. I don't think he wins. If he does, fantastic. But I think you're going to see him potentially at lower roster percentage and a guy who can perform and get himself in the top 15, top 20, which is all we need for someone at this price range.
And if you look at it, I want good drivers, but I want streaky putters at Augusta because I'm hearing the same things you all. These greens look like the fastest I've ever seen at Augusta.
Yeah, right, 100%. And you're like, and we know too, right? Look at what Joaquin Niemann has done in strong fields. Like he like with other players that if we see him there Saturday, Sunday at the top, and we see other guys like DJ, Brooks, Webb Simpson, like he's been there. He did that at the Tournament of Champions. He almost won. Not saying they're the same at all, but that's when you see this correlation of players who play well at TOC, play well at Augusta, play well. Like you start to see some trends here. And Joaquin Niemann is a young player, like you mentioned, streaky on the greens. But boy, if he gets that driver going and those irons are firing like they have been, his ball striking, he's 10th right now in ball striking in the last 24 rounds. Like I love him in this range if people are going to gravitate a little bit higher in the 7K range or a little bit lower to save that money for the top guys. He's right at that price tag that I think people might, I don't know if they will, just kind of gloss over him.
So if you were making 150 lineups, how would you like to diversify your lineups so then you don't have any duplicates and you've got like different varieties of balance build, maybe stalls and scrubs. We've got 2 guys in the 10, but how many lines would you have that? How many lines would you have balance builds? And how would you use the entire 50,000 salary cap space? Yeah,
really, really good questions. This is more game theory, right? Which is so important in DraftKings. Less in betting, right? You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
But I would probably go stars and scrubs here. And the reason being, right, is that stars and scrubs, like I mentioned just a while ago, last year's tournament, we saw that I believe there was I can't remember the exact number, but I think like close to half of the top 10 who finished in DraftKings scoring were below $7,500. I think there was, or maybe 4 out of 10 around there. 40 to 50% of the top 10 were below $7,500. And when you take a look at that, obviously you're going to see what their other lineups were constructed with, which was guys in the 10K range. This tournament is usually won by the studs, right? We need the winner. We need guys who are going to play well. They're usually won by the studs, these top 5 or 6 guys. Doesn't mean that another player can't come out of the woodworks and win, but that's the case. Most people will probably gravitate towards balance because there's so many good names here. You see, Will Zalatoris at $7,300. You see Tommy Fleetwood at $8K. You see Adam Scott, Paul Casey, Bubba Watson, $7,000 range. you see Corey Connor is below 7K, right? And so a lot of people are going to look to play balance because they want to get these names in their lineup, and they might not want to play the Billy Horschels and the Max Homas and the Justin Roses along with those guys. But look what happened with the players, right? We saw the Brian Harmons do well. These guys who are here can play extremely well. And so I'm probably going more stars and scrubs, staying away from like trying to chase the chalk. If I'm chasing the chalk, I'm going heavy overweight. If I'm playing Justin Thomas, I'm going like three. Like if he's rostered at 20%, I want to get him in like 35 to 40% of my lineups because I want to make sure that I'm getting above those guys that also have Justin Thomas. And so I'm going more stars and scrubs. I'm going to more game theory and trying to fade guys that potentially are these chalk bombs that could potentially be one of those few that missed the cut. So I'm going to do more stars and scrubs.
How much would you spend? Would you try and spend 50 or maybe leave a few?
Oh yeah. No, I would spend under. I always try to spend under. I never try to get 50K because what also too to mention, right? And you probably know this as well since you've been playing DFS for a long time. The Masters is one of the more public events that we see where the casual player will want to enter in a DraftKings lineup, right? We don't see that usually at the RBC Heritage, which is a great tournament. We don't usually see that elsewhere. It's usually at the Masters. And so you're going to get the casual people, and Tiger Woods not being here maybe, decreases that a little bit. Hope he's recovering well, but you go see a lot of casual players do that. And they're going to want to spend every single penny and not waste money. To differentiate your lineups and to stay away from those dupe lineups, it's to spend less than 50K.
Yeah, there are some lineups where I've saved like one lineup. I've got John Rahm, Colin Morikawa, Paul Casey, Louis Oosthuizen, Gary Woodland, Kevin Knott, and have 900 left over.
There you go. That's how you got to differentiate yourself if you want to win it big. And look, one thing to know before we leave here, Dylan, which I also think is vastly important as opposed to what we just talked about and what you just said, is that shrink your player pool. Right, we have 88 players here. I would try and make sure my core players and the players that I'm playing are small, and I'm not playing 40 of the 88 players in my lineup, right? Because then you're essentially boxing your own self out.
I think
the number to how many players you want to play is specific to you and to everyone else. There's no magic number, but I would try and really have conviction about these golfers that you really like. Shrink that core of players, and then you either win big or you lose big, right? If your players do well and you have a bunch of those players, you're overweight on JT, you're overweight on Brooks, you're overweight on these players, and you're playing those guys, and then you're scattershotting it down low in the other, the 7K or 6K range. That's how you really get up there, is you have a smaller player pool, your lineups hit when the players do well, and I'd much rather do that than try and get as much players as possible.
I think my biggest problem would be trying to have instead of too few guys, too many guys, because I want to have lineups with different guys. I want to have lineups where I've got everybody with a legitimate chance to win. But the problem is I've probably got too many guys in my player pool, so I may need to adjust.
Yeah, and it's specific to you, right? Like if you're, and it's a percentage, you got to figure out what works. In regular tournaments, maybe it's, with 156 golfers, maybe it's 25 to 30 golfers that you play. In this tournament, maybe you cut that, down to 20, down to 18. If you're rostering 18 players across 5 lineups, 20 lineups, 150 lineups, and your players hit, boy.
It's a high risk, high reward strategy. If you win big. If you lose, you snooze.
Right, exactly, right. So let's say you're putting in $20 into it, that's something that. And again, we should have mentioned this off the top. Please do this responsibly. Do not bet the mortgage. Do not take out the savings account to think you're going to win big in the Millie Maker. It is a tough contest. I've been doing this for a long time. You've been playing for a long time, and I'm sure you would attest to that. But yeah, you hit big. That's what if you're entering in GPPs, That's what you want to do. It's like Ricky Bobby, Dylan. You're either first or you're last. That's it.
Speaking of first, who do you think wins the Masters? Who do you think gets the green jacket on Sunday?
I have a thing here. Hold on. Oh, actually, it's in my other room. I was going to grab it. I have a Bryson DeChambeau hat. I just did some stuff with him over the past month, and he gave us some stuff. I think it's Bryson DeChambeau. I think he's definitely, primed to win another major. I think he's got the game to do it. One thing that I worry about, no green books here, right? Guys don't have green books. You got to do based off of feel, which experience, again, plays a huge factor. We know how much Bryson loves his green books and using all of his numbers. He'd be my first guy. And my second one, I think Webb Simpson, Dylan. I think Webb Simpson is someone that, has played well here. It is still a talk about driving as a stat that you want to focus on, but this is still a second shot course. This is still strokes gained approach to green. We know that. Who's one of the best? It's Webb Simpson. And I just like where his number is at. He's plus 3,500 on the DK Sportsbook right now. He's by up those other guys that we might have some question marks on. Webb Simpson hasn't been playing well of recent, but I think he's got a top 5, a top 10, and a top 20 in his last 3 starts here. It's pretty good.
And Big D likes another one the young way, but I don't think it's Bryson. I think this is the time where Xander Schauffele doesn't finish second and finally wins.
I love it.
Oh, man. How many events has he finished second? It seems like he finished second like 9,000 times.
Yeah, he and Tony Finau are competing for the most runner-up finishes. But yeah, I love it. Xander, look, he's a guy that I think is properly priced, right? Like he's finally in that price tag where you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. He's an immense talent. So if he wins, I'm gonna be singing your good graces. I'm not gonna be surprised because Xander is one of the best out there.
I mean, if you look at it, driving approach, round the green, Xander's up there, and I think this course will actually play more like a U.S. Open, and I think Xander will actually be better at this year's Masters than at the other ones.
Yeah.
Because although he finished second the year Tiger won 2 years ago.
Yeah,
but I think this course favored. I think this course is more U.S. Open because of the fast greens and fairways, where I think Xander stands a better chance. Plus, about time he wins. I know he's won 4 times, and contending every major seemingly in the last couple of years.
Pretty much, yeah. He's like he's like our generation's Louis Oosthuizen. Let's hope he doesn't get that where he just gets. Lou's got the all 4 runner-ups at these tournaments. So maybe he's better. I think he's better than Louis.
Yeah, although Louis won the Open at St. Andrews.
That's true. Yep, that's true. At least he's got one.
I'm trying to think of the year that I think Ricky Fowler finished top 5 in all 4 majors one year, and I'm like, would Louis hate to be on that list of next golfers?
2018 or 17? Yeah, I remember that. It might have been before that. Yeah, I think. You're right. It was amazing. And then Tony Finau did the same thing.
Yeah, and Ricky's not even invited here. I'm like, what happened?
I know, my cousin, the same last name. He's not even invited. And we'll get those texts from people back home saying, "Oh, are you playing in the Masters?" Because they see R. Fowler. I'm like, no, I'm not even close. I'm talking about it.
It's funny how Ricky Fowler and Jordan Spieth were 2 of most popular golfers on tour, but yet one of them just won for the first time in forever, and the other guy is, I don't know where Ricky is.
Yeah, he's finding something. He's searching, but thanks for having me, Dylan. This has been great. I'm excited. I'm excited for you and your fans to do well. You're providing some great content out there, so keep it up. And I'm looking forward to the Masters yet again, having 14 screens, Dylan, up where it's like Amen Corner, where I'm following all my golfers, or I'm watching Golf Channel. I'm pumped. I'm watching Fantasy National. I got the Rick Rungood live leaderboard. I don't know if he's going to have it for Augusta, but I'm excited, man. Golf in April is the start of something for us up here in New England. It's the signal of spring and golf season's upon us. So I'm pumped.
Yeah, major golf and a major golf starts, and the Masters
Yeah.
in April just feels 99 times better than
Oh,
November. Unfortunately, we don't have Tiger,
amen.
but
We
uh,
will.
as we've been doing for the last 13 months, life goes on. Thanks for hopping on.
Thanks, Dylan. Appreciate it, bud.